Hello there all my lovely jewelry makers, I'm Christina at CSLdesigns and today's video is part 2 of my Creality Falcon2 laser videos. So like I did mention in the previous video, this is a 22 watt laser. It's got integrated air assist, which is especially interesting for today's video, and also the triple monitoring system to keep it nice and safe. So if you watched the previous video, we focused on engraving and especially dove into color engraving, which I was very excited about, and I was really pleased with all the results we ended up with. Now if you haven't seen it, I'm going to leave a link to it in the description box down below. But in today's video, we're going to be focusing on cutting. So basically, having created all these necklaces for the previous video, I kind of thought, well, we need something to hang or store them on, don't we? And then I started thinking, we can make our own jewelry stands. And then my brain really started going with ideas for different designs, and I can definitely see myself doing more different designs in the future. Now what we're going to be working with today is 3mm thick plywood, but this machine actually cuts up to 15mm in one pass, which is quite thick, and that's because of how powerful it is with its 22 watts. Now we're going to be then using this plywood to make our own jewelry stands with, and they're going to basically be 3D, so we're going to cut shapes with the laser and then afterwards put them together to make an actual 3D stand. Now first of all, of course, I needed to design the stand, so I did that between Procreate and Photoshop, and the files were then converted to SVG files because that's what seems to work best in Lightburn, which is the program that you use to tell the laser what to do. Now the first design I had in my head, I knew I wanted to basically make a tree of life design that would be proper 3D, and then you could use the branches to basically hang the different pieces of jewelry on, so anything, necklaces, bracelets, rings, and even earrings as well, by making little holes in some of the branches. So for this I designed one basic flat tree shape. I then doubled that up, and then on one of them I made sure there was a cutout in the middle on the top end of the tree, and then on the other one it was going to be at the bottom end of the tree, and then you could slide them together and create basically a full 3D tree. Now of course I also needed to create a base for this tree to stand on so it wasn't going to just wobble over, and then I sent it to the laser and got the laser to cut it out. So we actually started out just making a little test piece, so we kind of made a small tree which I ended up actually liking, so I've kept it and finished it, and I thought this would be really cute for maybe just rings and a few bracelets or something. So it's a bit of a mini stand, but I also like the idea of actually making them in different sizes just to show you don't have to just make them in that one size. You can really customize it to what your preference is. But then after that one, we did cut it out in the intended size that I wanted it to have, which was a bit bigger to be able to hold necklaces and just more pieces in general. And also for the large one, I'd added holes in some of the branches for earrings, which I didn't have on the small one because that might be a little bit too fragile. But yeah, we then had the laser cut that out as well. Now I made two other designs, and those are both cat themed. Surprise, surprise. On one of them we have basically a post in the middle where there's then a cat sat right on top of it, and then below that there's a cat hanging on the post, and then we have a cat kind of stretching up the post, and then on the very bottom we have a cat kind of just stretching on the ground right next to the post. I really like this idea and I'm so happy with how it turned out, and I think the cats are perfect because you have the tails to then be able to kind of create little hooks with them that you can hang your jewelry onto. And again, I also got the laser to add holes to this so we can use it for earrings as well. And this one I also made in two different sizes as I thought it was really cute. Now the final design is kind of based off of this cat one, so I reused the cats, but instead of having them coming up a post, I created this arch where they're kind of climbing on it and then also being below it, but then I'm also incorporating birds and foliage into it. Again, for the purpose of creating more interest, but also more places where you can kind of hook your jewelry onto so you can store more. And this one I also think would be really great to make even bigger than this. Now these ones I also created a base for. So these are obviously just a flat design, but in order for them to stand I had to create a base that was strong enough so they wouldn't topple over as well. And again, I used the laser to cut all that out as well. Now what I really like about this machine is that it has integrated air assist, which I think is very important for especially cutting wood like this, because technically you're actually burning the wood with the laser, and that obviously creates singeing and it can create fire as well. But what the air assist does is it then helps prevent a lot of that singeing, so you get a much cleaner result. And usually you have to buy that kind of thing separately, but this machine has it integrated, so I think that's a really big plus. And you can both control it from the machine itself with a dial on the side, or even from Lightburn itself. And this laser also has quite a few safety features. Now I mentioned that in the previous video, but if you didn't see that, it actually has sensors for both the lens to tell you if it needs cleaning, but also for fire. So in case the laser actually creates a fire with the wood, it can tell you that as well. And of course there is an emergency off button. And also, like I mentioned in the previous video, always make sure to have safety around you, like a fire extinguisher, just worst case scenario. But anyway, once I then cut out all of these pieces, and was really pleased with how it was all coming together, because obviously straight away I could see that the pieces fit together nicely, so that's always very satisfying. And then the next step was to start putting them together. Now I knew I wanted to paint them as well, so they weren't just bare wood, because that's not really my taste. So I started out giving everything a couple of coats of gesso just to get a nice clean base, and then I had to choose what colours I wanted to use. So I knew I wanted to use a copper paint and a silver paint for some of them, but I did also want to try some in a solid colour, and of course, me being me, it had to be purple, didn't it? Anyway, I started painting them, and I did it all separately before I started putting them together, and I gave everything a few coats of paint as well. I found that to be easier than waiting until after I put it together, because then you'd have to get into all nooks and crannies. Also because I had to do several coats of the paint as well to get a nice coverage. Once the paint was then done and dry, it was time to start putting them together, which I was very excited about. Obviously the part I'd been waiting for, basically, to see them finished. So I brought out the wood glue, because obviously I want to make sure that you can pick this up without the whole thing falling apart. So I just put the glue in a few strategic places, put them all together, and of course let it dry overnight. And finally I just touched it up with a little bit of paint here and there, and then basically the pieces were done. And then all that's left to do is start hanging my jewellery on it. So I'm really pleased with how these turned out, and I do think they can definitely also be made quite a bit bigger than this, and they'll be a really nice feature on your shelf while still being quite functional to store your jewellery. So that's what we ended up doing with the laser in this video here, and I've really enjoyed using this laser for it, because like I said, the air assist was very helpful, especially with the cutting process here. But I really hope you like these jewellery stands as well. Like I said, I can definitely see myself designing more. Now of course, check out the description box below the video for more information and useful links. And don't forget, if you haven't already, you can check out the previous video. Otherwise, I really hope you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for watching it, and I'll see you in the next one.